for joining me. This is Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, otherwise known as Pro Bricky, due to the fact that I've been a masonry contractor for over 35 years now, and I've got plenty of years left in me yet, I think. I want to talk on the subject of cognitive dissonance and the paradox of consciousness. Can a person be conscious of truth and still run with a lie? Can a person be conscious of something that they need to do and somehow find a way in which they just don't do it? And I believe 100% yes. And this happens in a lot of relationships. And this is why a lot of relationships fail. This is why a lot of relationships don't succeed, because the one or the other can see a problem, brings it to the table and voices it, and the other doesn't see. And then the other could have a problem, brings it to the table, voices it, and it might not be direct. It could be subtle. It could be just a little subtle elbow in terms of the verbal way in which it's communicated, and it's missed. A lot of people have difficulty in bringing issues to the forefront. And the problem with this is there is a place where that can produce peace and keep things peaceful and all of that. But on the other hand, it also brings a negligence towards the opportunity to resolve. There is a place for silence, there is a place for quiet, but there's also a place for voice and a place for tone, as it were, in the journey to find resolve. Excuse me. I think we've all been guilty of not dealing with things that we've been confronted with. One of the main problems that I had when I was a minister, a Christian minister, was, and this affected my first marriage, was I had all the creativity you could think of in my mind, but I had tremendous trouble executing it. I had difficulty executing the stuff that was being manifested in my mind. I had all these wonderful thoughts, but I had this passivity, this spirit of passivity that hovered over me. And I'm not sure if you're listening right now and you struggle with this. You have these ideas in your mind, and they're valid and they're good and they're reasonable and they're fair and they're worthy of pursuit. But something inside you just seems to undermine the inspiration and energy that you need, the motivation that you need, the passion that you need to begin the journey towards the manifestation of whatever the vision is that's residing inside your mind, that you would, by your own origin of oneness with that vision, would like to carry out. But you're thwarted by this spirit of passivity. This is why a lot of things never come to tuition. So when you see somebody that's actually creating something, you know something good's happening inside that person, because they are getting past all the unseen barriers that you're confronted with inside yourself when you're trying to create something. I think it's wonderful when somebody creates something and out of nothing, even if it fails, because there is always something to learn from failure. Some of the greatest lessons we can ever learn in life are from things of which we fail at. And the main thing to remember about failure, and most people have heard this and know this, is that failure is not final. It's most definitely not final. Only death is final. And I heard a saying today, quoted from Marcus Aurelius, along the lines of, always be aware of your approaching death. Now, we don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but don't underestimate the fact that it could happen sooner than it should. And we're to live in a way in which time is of the most valuable essence of the things that we have. Time is so taken for granted in so many different ways today. We need to be conscious of the fact that we're not wasting it. But coming back to the origin of, or the content of what this talk's supposed to be about, is essentially, how can good people do bad? How can people know that there's something that they need to fix? And because of the way in which this, say, issue or whatever it is that needs to be fixed is confronting them, it can often cause people to do the opposite. Can sometimes actually cause them to aggravate the problem rather than fix it. This is a tremendous, I'm sure there's all clinical names for this and different things that the psychs call all this, but just being a street bum, I've seen this so many times, and what I've learnt, and this is the reason why I have a picture of a woman on the front of this talk, what I've learnt is there's an innate part of woman that has to have some element of chaotic non-conformity taking place. That's what I'm going to call it. I've never thought of it before, but just think for a minute. Chaotic non-conformity. Chaotic non-conformity going on in their psyche. And this can come from childhood, this thing, and it is powerful, it is clever, it is cunning, it is evil, it can be used equally for good and just as effectively for good. Usually when it's used for good in that sense, it's motivated by monetary gain. Charity, it can be perceived to be charitable, but it's really only a part of the process of making money. On the other hand, it can look as though there's always some kind of underlying reason as to the engagement of these people in their daily life. Take a woman, for instance, and this happens to men too, but please just give me the courtesy to talk about women, because I spent most of my time with my woman. There always seems to be an element of chaotic nonconformity working somewhere deep inside the recesses of woman. And today in the spirit, just in the spirit, I saw how deep, how dark, and how clever this is and can go. It's something that we're all surrounded by, and it's something that makes women attractive. It's something that sets apart women that are more vulnerable to this chaotic nonconformity. It seems to bring incredible attraction, incredible desirableness towards these women. And this is the part that's surreal. This is the part that draws their victims in. It's almost like the Greek goddesses called the sirens. And when the sailors would try and go past wherever they were located, they'd be drawn in by their lust and the pleasures thereof, and then they would be murdered by the sirens. Well, this happens in much less dramatic ways in daily life, but the consequences, whilst not mortal, can be, well, in most cases, can be very serial in terms of the consequences of this kind of behaviour breaking through and getting the result, the end result of what it's trying to accomplish. And this is where you see women in divorce courts, and men as well, being exposed, because this power has a tremendous way in which it can hide itself. It's very covert and stealth. But once exposed, it seems to unravel itself and expose itself in ways in which you would never imagine the person having the possibilities to behave. Some people just don't know. For the most part, I'm sure of this, most people just don't know that this innate bend towards evil is within them. And it can be triggered in so many different ways. A person can be plodding along perfectly normal, everything going fine, no issues, no problems. And then, in an inkling and in a breath, something changes, person changes. Now, you can't physically kind of notice it, but something happens on the inside and things start to change. And I'm not talking about hormonal or this kind of thing. I'm talking about spiritual soul changes that causes a perfectly good person to turn into a very sinister person. And the Bible speaks about this in Romans chapter 7, very clearly, very clearly. And what the power is behind this is rules. Rules that people think they need to keep to impress the people or the person or the thing that they're keeping them for. Rules that people think they need to keep to impress the person or the thing that they think they need to keep the rules for. Rules. that the person thinks they need to keep to impress the person or the thing, to keep that person or thing happy and to stop them from being sad. This will trigger, right? And this is why it happens in relationships, because the partner wants to make their partner happy, but it's not for the right reasons. It's not for healthy reasons. And this ignites and sparks into action this sinful, evil nature that dwells within. And the next thing, nobody sees it, nobody realizes it's there, and the next thing we've got some really odd, strange behavior going on. But the person's still trying to impress you, but there's things happening that are just not. They're not impressing. There's no impressionable aspect to it. It's unimpressionable. And it's confusing. And if you're not aware of this part of female nature, you can actually find yourself in all sorts of quandary and confusion and whatnot with it. It's quite complex. But if you're aware of it, you can kind of navigate it a bit. So I'll close this part of the talk at this stage, but what I'm revealing is there's a nature inside all of us that can be triggered whilst that person's trying to do good, to bend them towards the opposite, and they don't even know themselves. And it's troubling and it's real. And we need to be aware of it, and we need to know how to navigate it. This is Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, New South Wales, Australia, on the ProBrick exclusive YouTube channel. Subscribe, ring the bell, like, share and comment, and I'll see you on the next one.